LBC.
This is LBC. It is Cool Keir with Sir Keir Starmer. And just to give you the time, it's 3 minutes after 9 on Monday, November the 15th. Good to see you, Sir Keir. A couple of weeks after our last date, I think you've been laid down by the lurgy again, have you?
Yeah, well, not again. It's the first time I've had
I'm so sorry.
Our
one of your
boy,
children,
I think in the summer our boy had it.
Yep.
But I got it just over 2 weeks ago. I got the final positive test about 20 minutes before PMQs and 45 minutes before the response to the budget. So Ed Miliband, I had to phone up and say, can you do PMQs for me? When? In 14 minutes, and then Rachel Reeves did a brilliant job on 45 minutes notice, the hardest job in politics, responding to the budget. So the team stepped up absolutely brilliantly.
You must be delighted. But there we are. You knew that they're batting number 2 and 3 or whatever. You knew they'd come in and
I knew they'd come in and do a really good job, but and I had to go home and self-isolate for 10 days.
Can I ask you, I've heard mixed verdicts, because obviously, as you know, Sir Keir, I speak to a lot of people on the radio. Some people say, I had it was like a bit of a tough cold. Others say, dear God, I couldn't move for 4 days. My wife or my husband brought me, liquids in bed. Sir Keir?
Look, it was tougher than I thought it was going to be because I'm double vaccinated, and therefore it's a lesson for all of us. I think that if you're double vaccinated, you can still get it, so be careful. And if you're eligible for your booster, anybody listening who's eligible for their booster, I would say, having just had COVID, go and get it straight away. It's the safest thing to do because it's not pleasant.
You're here for Cool Keir. I have to put to you, not this Cool Keir, but you are supposedly accused of using your Commons office for party political campaigning with your Cool Keir Zoom chats. You're breaking the same rules, it is said, as Conservative Sir Geoffrey Cox, using a remote court hearing. Of course, in Sir Geoffrey Cox's case, you should not be using your office for work not linked to your role. Sir Keir.
This is complete and utter nonsense. So this Cool Keir was We were going around the country virtually because it was the middle of lockdown, and therefore I'm the leader of the opposition. I've got to get out, talk to businesses, talk to the public, etc., and I'm not allowed to get out because of restrictions. So we did a virtual one, which was to do a Zoom call where members of the public could talk to me, businesses could talk to me, etc. It's exactly what the leader of the opposition should be doing, and that store is an absolute nonsense. The idea as leader of the opposition, I can't talk to the public. It only has to be said in one sentence to be seen to be ridiculous.
Let's get those calls through you two now. Graham in Rugby, you're through to the leader of the Labour Party. Go ahead, Graham. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Graham.
Oh, good morning. Yes, Keir, I'd like to ask your views, please, on second jobs and to what extent they get paid. And I'd really like you not to refer to the Conservative Party at all, because I'm interested in your values rather than, you using the question as a platform for bashing someone else. Does that make sense to you?
Stay on the line. Sir Keir.
Yeah, it does, Graham, and let me see if I can do it in the way you've asked me. And if I don't, I'll come back to you to sort of score me out of 10.
Point.
Look, I strongly believe that paid consultancies and directorships should just be outlawed, and we've been arguing for that for quite a long time in the Labour Party because there's pretty obviously the potential for a conflict of interest, and we've seen that in the last few weeks. I do think there's a strong case for saying second job should go. Now, with probably some exceptions. So, for example, and Graham, I'm trying to not breach a rule, but Rosella Allen Khan is a Labour MP. She does shifts at A&E in a local hospital and did it during COVID. And most people, I think, would say that seems to me to have a sort of public service element to it. Equally, and I think now I'm trying to be fair, Graham, both Tory and Labour MPs do things like army reserves and police reserves. And again, I think there's a sort of public service element there. But beyond that, I think the time has come really to say second jobs must go. And that was our position, Graham, going into the 2019 general election, because I think just a clean, stronger line needs to be drawn. Graham, what we're doing, just so you can then test this, is we're going to put to Parliament on Wednesday, we're just announcing this morning, so you're the first person to hear it, a vote which is going to ask MPs to vote to get rid of paid directorships and paid consultancies and change the rules in Parliament. So now we're putting that down. It's for every MP to decide how they want to vote on that, but that will perhaps be a measure of where people are on how we actually now move this forward. Graham, I've tried to do that without referring to the events of the last 2 weeks.
I'll get into that bit. Don't worry, Sir Keir. Let's go back. Graham, a quick assessment of what you've heard.
Yeah, well, I am somewhat encouraged by that. I don't have any allegiance to any political party, by the way. You know, I guess my concern here, is that I think MPs are paid well, but also paid fairly. I don't begrudge the 82,000 they get and the good pension they get and the severance payment they get when they end. I don't begrudge any of that. Mm. My concern is that if they are earning substantial amounts of money outside of that, then they're using their vast talent and experience in areas that, well, they should be serving the people and loving the people that have voted for them.
All right, Graham, thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Just to clarify, someone who is currently sitting in the House, Sir Keir, under what you're going to bring in, I understand, on Wednesday, who might be the director of a financial company, might part own his own financial company, what would he or she have to do then?
Well, I think we have to say that...
this would be retrospective or not?
No, I don't think it should be retrospective. I think if we're going to move forward, and Graham will now forgive me, I mean, we've had an awful...
No, well, I'm moving you to the political side now. So, Graham, this is me doing this.
We've had a terrible 2 weeks, and never forget what actually happened, because Owen Paterson lobbied the government on behalf of a company that paid him a huge amount of money on a monthly basis. That's been against the rules for a very, very, very long time. He did it repeatedly. The independent commissioner, then the Standards Committee said that he was wrong. And rather than face the punishment, the Prime Minister led a charge to rip up the entire standards procedure. We've got to correct it this afternoon, but the Prime Minister led an assault on the entire process. So rather than saying, well, I accept there's been a breach of the rules, I, Prime Minister, need to uphold standards, therefore I'm going to advise Owen Paterson to take his punishment, which actually, by the way, would have been in Owen Paterson's best interests because he ended up having to resign. The Prime Minister ripped up the rules, and that's what I described as corrupt and contemptible. I'm now talking about what might happen going forward. I don't think it should be retrospective. I think if people have acted within the rules, we can't now say they were wrong. But how do we clean this up? We clean this up by drawing a very stark line: no paid consultancies, no directorships, no second jobs, save for, let's say, public interest or public service jobs. So we can have a debate about where that line is drawn. But I think most people know the difference between being paid on a monthly basis by a commercial firm and working in A&E on shifts, particularly during COVID.
You've not touched yet on this Geoffrey Cox part of this, which of course is believed to be somewhere in the region of £4, £5, £6 million that he earned.
Well, he's obviously a barrister, he's sort of moonlighting as an MP.
But how is that different from your own shadow Attorney General, Lord Falconer, who I read yesterday has made money representing a gold and copper mining company in the British Virgin Islands?
Well, I think there are a number of important differences there. Firstly, Lord Falconer's in the House of Lords.
Right.
And in the House of Lords, you do get a daily allowance for going in, but you're not paid beyond that, and therefore very many members of the House of Lords do have jobs.
So that makes it okay to work?
He is acting
he's your
as a
shadow
lawyer.
Attorney General. Have you spoken to him about this?
I have, and got an absolute assurance that he has never lobbied the government, which would not be acceptable to me as leader of the Labour Party.
OK, and just lastly, and I know you've been pressed on this before, but you've also, I understand, been in receipt of more than £100,000 for providing legal advice while an MP. And again, the same paper says more than £40,000 of which from clients who've not been declared. Are you able to tell me, Sir Keir, who are these clients?
Well, Nick, just let me clarify the position, because
Go ahead.
I have given up my practising certificate nearly 2 years ago now, so I'm not able to give legal advice. I haven't been able to for the best part of years. That was for 2 years. That was my choice, so I've got no personal interest in this at all. Some years ago, I earned money giving written advice. I've not been to court since I became an MP. But I did keep my practising certificate until I gave it up 2 years ago. And I did provide written advice on a number of occasions, all of which is properly declared in accordance with the rules. On your specific point on confidentiality, all clients of all lawyers are entitled to and assert confidentiality. So, Nick, if you came to me for legal advice, I can't then go and tell the world that I gave you legal advice, and certainly not what about, because otherwise the whole relationship breaks down. Now, so what I've done, the only thing I've done is to protect client confidentiality. And Nick, I should say this, as you would expect from a former Director of Public Prosecutions. Before I put my registered interest, I consulted the registrar who gives advice on how you should declare, and the advice I was given was to declare it in this particular way, which is what I've done.
OK. And was this when you were working with Mishcons?
No, this was for different advice, for different, just written advice. But this is now going back several years. The most important thing is I've given up my legal certificate. I cannot practice as a lawyer. That's my own decision.
And it's confidentiality that precludes you from saying who paid
It's not my confidentiality either.
So, no, it is the confidentiality issue that precludes you from telling me who paid that money.
Yeah, exactly. No lawyer is entitled to breach that confidentiality, whether it's the parliamentary rules or elsewhere, and nor should they, because, Nick, if you did come to me for legal advice on a criminal issue, you would not expect me to then tell the world what I've been advising.
I want to know who's been talking. I thought that was my secret. OK, let's go to the next caller. Sakina's in Uxbridge. Sakina, go ahead. You're through to Sir Keir Starmer.
Sakina, hi, it's Keir.
Hi, Keir. Hi, Nick.
Hello.
I just wanted to know, following the scandal of racism in the Yorkshire cricket,
Yep.
I wanted to know what you personally, as the leader, but also what Labour is doing to address this issue, especially given that I'm from the minority, and I am quite interested in cricket.
Well, Sakina, thank you for raising this. There's clearly an issue.
This is just to remind everyone, of course, this is a Yorkshire cricket player, Azim Rafiq, who said that he endured a considerable amount of time when he was playing for Yorkshire, where he was the subject of some vile racist words and slurs. He's also named the former England captain Michael Vaughan as well in all of this. Sir Keir.
Yeah, Azim Rafiq, a fantastic cricketer, subjected, he says, to racial slurs, and then Yorkshire club looked into it and I think got it completely wrong. Firstly, they didn't really sanction anybody, and secondly, they said that some of the words, the racial slurs that have been used, were just banter. Completely wrong, and unsurprisingly, the cricket authorities have banned Yorkshire from holding international games, etc. So there's been some progress, but not enough, Sakina, and I'd like to see them go much, much further.
What do you mean by that, Sakina?
Well, just as we've done in other sports, football is much more my sport, to absolutely assert there is no place for racism in any sport, that includes cricket. And that means that when there are examples, there have got to be clear sanctions. And I think the double problem here, at the very least, was no real sanctions. And this passing off of racial slurs as banter, which is completely unacceptable. So I'm not surprised it's become an issue. Let this be the issue that cleans up racism in cricket or any other sport, for that matter.
And just to underscore that you won't be aware of this, but another England player, Adil Rashid, has backed the claim by Azim Rafiq that he heard Michael Vaughan make racist comments about Asian Yorkshire players, something that Michael Vaughan, by the way, categorically denies. But lastly on this, with another player coming forward, probably speaks to your idea of a root and branch review, doesn't it?
It does, and the sooner the better.
All right. Sakina, enjoy your cricket. I hope you watched. It was a fantastic T20 yesterday. I'm afraid I had my money on the wrong team, but we can't always win. We go to Leicester, which, of course, is my football team, as you know, and it's Khalid. Khalid, good morning. You're on the radio.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Keir.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Khalid.
Your question, Khalid.
Yeah, there's a lot to say, but you need to come down to my house for a cup of tea. We can discuss it at length.
Next time he's up Foss Way, which is, by the way, the road, in case anybody...
Khalid, I've been in Leicester many, many times, both as a politician, but also I used to run the Crown Prosecution Service, and we had staff everywhere in England and Wales, and so I had staff in Leicester, so I know Leicester and the communities and some of the criminal justice issues pretty well.
Okay, I won't keep you too long, obviously, but basically, look, politics is... There's a lot of issues. I'm in the ward of Claudia Webb. The Labour Party, I've dealt with the Keith Baz before, which didn't turn out very tasteful, to say the least. But having said that, look, politics generally is full of lies, a lot of scheming, a lot of ducking and diving, not to mention cash for questions, etc. So this is not directed at yourself personally, but I'm saying, look, like the Tories, there's been issues regarding Islamophobia. Which I'm saying 60-70% have certain views against Muslims. Yeah. So I'm saying with the Labour Party, is there any any, what do you call it, to vetting or any...
Okay. Just to remind my listeners, Khalid, of course, your MP is Claudia Webb, who has been handed, she is appealing, but has been handed a 10-week jail term, suspended for 2 years at a court after she was convicted of threatening to throw acid in the face of a woman who'd been a friend of her boyfriend, Sir Keir.
Khalid, look, firstly, thank you for raising this. And I'm glad you have, because nothing could distinguish between me and the Prime Minister better than these two cases. You've got Owen Paterson found to be in breach of the rules for lobbying for cash, and the Prime Minister, instead of telling him to take his punishment, leads his troops through the sewers to rip up the entire system halfway through the game, get rid of the standards procedure. So rather than saying we're going to uphold the standards and the punishment, he rips the whole thing up. With Claudia Webb, which is the case I had to deal with, the Labour Party had to deal with, when she was charged with the criminal offence, we suspended her. When she was convicted of a criminal offence, we expelled her from the Labour Party. So we have expelled her. She is no longer a member of the Labour Party. Khalid, would go further and say she should step down as an MP. And if she doesn't step down, then I'm sure there will be a recall position and petition. And I would support that. So nothing gives you a better distinction. When Claudia Webb is found to have broken the rules, we take action, including expelling her from the Labour Party. When Owen Paterson's found to have breached the rules, the Prime Minister pulls up the roots and the enforcement mechanism. You couldn't get a clearer distinction between our two approaches.
I hear you, Sir Keir, but were she here or one of her team, she would probably point you towards the fact she has lodged an appeal and it's due to be heard in March of next year.
Yeah, she has.
So is she guilty before her appeal is heard, Sir Keir?
Well, at the moment, she's convicted. Yes. There's no doubt about that.
So the appeal counts for nothing?
Well, it doesn't, and we'll have to see how she gets on. But the appeal doesn't suspend the conviction. Many people in this, had she gone to prison, and other people have, I've seen many of these cases.
Should she have gone to prison?
You would be serving your sentence.
Were you surprised she didn't go? Let me rephrase that. Were you surprised she didn't get a jail term?
Well, look, it's for the judge to decide. And the one thing I hated when I was working in criminal justice was you'd have a prosecutor, a defender and a judge, and the judge would come to a decision and then some politician would pop up and say, I wouldn't have done that, having not listened to all the evidence. But look, it was serious, and because of that, she's been expelled from the Labour Party.
Is there ever a path for her back into the Labour Party?
She's convicted, and I think there should be a by-election in Leicester East.
Thanks for your call, Khalid. To Chris in Richmond. Chris, you're on the radio. Your question. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Keir. Good morning, Nick.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Chris.
Hi there. Given that people are having to wait hours for ambulances, do you agree with me that the tactics of Insulate Britain are utterly unacceptable?
Completely. And we've seen those images of the protesters gluing themselves to the road, and you've seen desperate people trying to get sometimes relatives to hospitals. I can't remember the exact day. I remember seeing a woman who I think had her mother or something in the back of the car trying to get to hospital, pleading human being to human being, please let me get my mum to hospital. There'll be many other examples. Protest and having strong views is a very good thing, but I actually think that the tactics here are completely wrong and counterproductive. And actually, just at the moment, we need to bring people together in relation to the climate crisis, not engage in these tactics which are completely counterproductive. I want to take you to Glasgow,
but a quick response from Chris, a special response, because I'm going to take you to Glasgow in a minute. Yeah. Chris?
So I understand that one Labour councillor was among the people that was arrested for these protests. Should there be serious repercussions for that individual?
Well, look, Chris, I don't know is the answer to that, whether there was. Nick is about to correct me, but
are you referring, Chris, Theresa Norton, Scarborough Council? Is that the person? You're okay. Yes. Theresa Norton, who is a Labour member of Scarborough Council, Sir Keir, blocked the M25, the M3 and the M11, arrested 4 times over 10 days. Sir Keir.
Nick, whenever I do these sessions, there's always a bit of homework that I'm left with, and I try to do this faithfully.
Should she be expelled from the party?
I need to go and have a look. I don't know the details of that, I'm afraid. I'm not bluffing.
Well, from what no, I don't think you are bluffing. What you just said, she's not got a future in the party, does she?
Well, I need to have a go and look at what has happened there, Nick. But as I hope I faithfully do on this programme, when there are issues that arise, I usually go away and look at them and see what we do about it, and obviously we'll do this again in a month or two.
Quick sentence response from you, Chris, because I must move on. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it really isn't that difficult. If I think the facts are clear, then that person needs to go, doesn't it?
All right, we'll see. We'll obviously keep a watchful eye on that. Can I take you to Glasgow, Sir Keir?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister, I think it's fair to say he's not hailing it as a massive success, but he says progress has been made. There has been a breakthrough. Broadly speaking, it was a good cop. In your view, was it a bad cop, Sir Keir?
It didn't achieve what we needed to achieve. The decade to 2030 is crucially important, and we need to halve our emissions by then, and we didn't achieve what we needed to achieve. Nick, I don't want to come here and just talk it down, because that's in nobody's interest. It's too important for that, and what we've got to do is redouble our efforts to make sure we do what's necessary by 2030. But it didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. I think the Prime Minister seemed to be saying yesterday that phasing down coal and phasing out coal are basically the same thing. I don't agree. I think if you phase down, you are reducing, but you're not eliminating. If you phase out, you're eliminating. And I don't think the Prime Minister helps either the global effort or himself to sort of pretend or to over-pretend that this is all fine and on track, because it isn't.
Whose fault was it that we didn't gain more traction, Sir Keir?
I think leaders across the world needed to step up to the plate.
Well, can I point you towards Russia and towards China and towards...
I'd say particularly the big emitters. I do think we do need to look at the Prime Minister on this. We needed global leadership. We're chair of the G7. We're co-host of COP. Yep. That puts us in a leading position. And what you need in that position is a Prime Minister who has something very precious on the international stage, which is trust, the ability to go to the big emitters and have those serious conversations, to go to the smaller and developing, not necessarily smaller, but developing countries, and to build that coalition. And if you look at what Gordon Brown did in the aftermath of the economic crisis in 2008, he went around the world. He was haranguing every leader around the world to come up with a global solution. I didn't see that from our Prime Minister, and I think the reason for that is he doesn't have the trust that I would want him to have on the international stage, and that is a problem for us. Now, it's not the only problem in COP, because it's a big undertaking, but global leadership, international leadership really, really mattered.
Let's go to other questions. Thanks for that, Sir Keir. Pauline in Watford, you're through to Sir Keir. Go ahead, Pauline. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Pauline.
Good morning, Sir Keir.
Yes.
With reference to the performance of the Metropolitan Police on the Cressida Dick, given that on more than 6 occasions things have gone badly wrong, but as a black person, the things that I noticed particularly is what happened with the 2 murdered young women. In terms of...
Well, we must go carefully. One is still going before the courts, but certainly in the case of Sarah Everard, I'm sorry, I just need to get that out there. My apologies, Pauline, but on you go. If I could move you to your question, yes, I guess it's is it going to be one of confidence, Pauline? Sorry to talk over you, I had to do that legally. Go ahead, Pauline.
Sorry, I did not quite get that.
If I could just move you to your question, because there's one of those cases going before the courts, so we must tread carefully.
I see.
No, don't worry, Pauline, that's my problem. What's your question?
My concerns are that with reference to the young black
women,
sickle cell person, and all of the issues that were around that also indicated that there was a lazy attitude towards responding towards the needs of black minorities when they were in desperate need. And I think, I wonder why, Sir Keir, it seems that yourself and Sadiq Khan continues to support Cressida Dick as the Commissioner of the Met Police.
OK, I'm going to end it there, Pauline. Thank you. A very powerful question. Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, Pauline, look, thank you very much for your question. I can sense in your voice just how much this means to you, and there are really serious cases that need to be looked into. I won't go into the individual circumstances, but they do need to be looked into. I think there's a wider cultural issue.
What do you mean by that, Sir Keir?
Again, without trespassing on the cases, there is evidence emerging of various WhatsApp groups, etc., where unacceptable...
Oh, this is the exchange of photographs.
Yeah,
and well, they've been convicted, don't worry.
Cultural issues there that need to be addressed. And I want to see Cressida Dick as Commissioner addressing those issues.
She still has your confidence.
Well, yes.
That was a bit reluctant.
There's a job of work for her to do, but I'll tell you why I take this. I have seen any number of cases where something's gone wrong, particularly in criminal justice, where rather than righting the wrong, we've gone after the person at the top of whichever organisation it is, and then it's thought to be a great step forward if they eventually step down. But the underlying problem is not addressed. And so, Pauline, I come at this from saying, how do we best address the underlying issues? And I would say Cressida Dick has to get on with addressing those underlying issues. But I've always been reluctant to be drawn into this idea that if you simply remove the person at the top, you've dealt with the question or the substantive issue underneath, because that's never been, or very rarely been, the experience in all my years working in criminal justice.
Can we say then she needs to lift her game, to use a football analysis?
I think she knows that, and there are clearly issues that need to be addressed here.
Pauline, thank you. I'm sorry I spoke over you. There were just a couple of things you said that we have to be really careful about. Nobody knows better than Sir Keir why I did that. So, Pauline, thank you for your question. Ian in Liverpool, you're through to Sir Keir. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one. As a lifelong Liverpool supporter, why, Sir Keir, did you write an article for some newspaper the other day? Surely that's not going to gain you any support across the North West.
I think this was around party conference time, and of course to remind some listeners, Ian, I know you know, but the Sun effectively lost Liverpool with its coverage of the Hillsborough tragedy, in which it made some headlines I don't even wish to repeat. Sir Keir, it was a surprise to see you pop up in the Sun.
Yeah, Ian, don't for a minute think that I would condone that coverage. I think pretty universally that was rightly condemned. But it is very important as leader of the Labour Party that I speak to as many of the public as possible across the whole of the United Kingdom, and that includes those that read The Sun, and the only way I can speak to them is to write in The Sun. Ian, I respect your strong-held views on this, I should say, I really do, but in the end, my job as leader of the opposition is to be utterly focused on the next election, and that means I must get the Labour message across to as many people as possible. We've made huge changes in the Labour Party in the last year and a half. It's very important that I'm able to communicate that to people, because if I can't demonstrate that change, then it makes the next election that much more difficult for us. But Ian, I do respect your views on this.
Quick response, Ian.
If nobody reads the Sun, how are you going to get your message across?
Ian says no one reads The Sun in Liverpool. How are you going to get your message across? I think Ian probably, Sir Keir would point you to other cities where maybe the readership is greater, but I know that is very different. Would you write for them again, Sir Keir?
I would do, yeah.
OK. Last question. Jack in Rayleigh. Jack, your question. Go ahead. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Sir Keir. Could you tell me what you would do as opposed to what Priti Patel is doing, which appears to be a failure to stop these illegal crossings of the Channel? I, for one, am getting very concerned about this. We're talking about thousands a day now. Could you tell me what you would do if you were in charge of a Labour government?
Just to put it in context, it's more than 80,000 so far this year, which is 4 times the total of last year. And most tragically of all, we know that at least 3 people drowned last week. Talks take place today between Priti Patel and her French counterpart. Sir Keir?
Yeah, the first thing I should do is address the people who've drowned, because whatever view we all take on this, it is tragic that anybody loses their lives at sea in this way, and we've all seen the images. So I think as a human being we address that. Jack, in terms of directly answering your question, we've got to have a better and stronger agreement with the French authorities. This has been going on for a very, very long time, and we've got to address that particular relationship between us and France. In more long-term, Jack, is we've got to tackle the problem upstream, and that means working in other countries. One of the reasons I was so against the government cutting our foreign aid is that if you don't tackle some of the issues upstream, then you will never fully get to grips with this. The other thing I should say on Priti Patel is she's very good at announcing what she's going to do, and it's not making a blind bit of difference. And I think people are absolutely seeing that now in terms of the numbers. So she's not getting to grips with this, and I think she needs to be held to account for that.
All right, last couple of things. This has come in from Flo in Leicester. I'm a Leicester voter. I've heard what Sir Keir says about Claudia Webb. Please tell me he wouldn't support Keith Vaz going for the seat, as I've heard. This is, of course, the man who had been the MP in that area before.
No, our constituency party will decide it, but it won't be Keith Vaz.
That's pretty straightforward on that one. This comes in... Oh, yes, we need to get a word from him. We heard from Ian in Liverpool, though. It would appear, though, that a Liverpool taxi driver and certainly the Liverpool police and counter-terror agencies have performed particularly well in what would appear to have been a major threat. Look, this is very cloudy at the moment, I understand, but what you're picking up so far, Sir Keir?
Well, it's an emerging picture, but it looks really concerning, and I'm sure communities in Liverpool will wake up and be very worried this morning, and particularly those in and around the hospital area. It looks as though the response has been first class, as you would expect. A little bit more detail is needed on what's emerging as to what may have happened, but let's let the investigation take its course. It is serious. The arrests have been under the counter-terrorism provisions, so that tells you where this investigation may be, and I emphasise may be, heading.
Raquel in North London, how did Sir Keir Starmer react to the way the Israeli ambassador was treated at the LSE last week? This is if you are aware of this ambassador.
Yeah, I am. I actually put out some words on it saying that it was outrageous that she was treated in the way she. There are strong views in relation to all things Israel, and people should express those views. But when you see images of an ambassador in the United Kingdom running out of a building with her security team to get into a car for her own protection, then the line has been crossed for me. Strong views, yes. Strong arguments, yes. Freedom of expression, yes. But when an ambassador has to run for protection in our country, something's gone wrong and somebody's crossed the line. Two
newspapers yesterday had the Labour Party ahead in the polls. Has the tide turned?
I hope so. And I was very pleased to see those polls.
The Daily Express points out every time you're effectively under house arrest, the party seems to do better when you're under house arrest.
We're a team, and I don't think anybody could say I haven't been pretty loud and clear on the Patterson issue, the dominant issue in the last 2 weeks. I think I led with the charge that the Prime Minister was corrupt, and that word is now stuck. But yes, look, am I pleased to see it? But I know the polls go up and the polls go down. I know that leading into the 2015 election, Labour was ahead and then we lost. I know that Theresa May was well ahead in 2017 and she ended up with a hung parliament. So am I pleased? Yes. Have we got more work to do? Yes. Right. But we can't live by the daily fluctuations of the polls.
And as an Arsenal bloke, I understand Gary Neville might be joining the Labour Party. Are you aware of this?
That discussion is pure myth. I talked to Gary. He's got he's a very, very influential sports commentator.
He's a great pundit.
He's really fantastic. And he hits the nail on the head so many times. And so I got great respect for him. And, it's just great to see Arsenal doing well.
Yeah, but do you want Gary on board? Do you want Gary in your team, on your squad?
Look, I think, Gary's doing a brilliant job as he is. The discussion, there hasn't been a discussion with him or me about policy. I think he's brilliant on so many. And he's got an ability to just nail the point. Yeah. And sometimes he's got the ability to... I remember with the breakaway, the suggested breakaway Super League, he spoke for pretty well every football fan spontaneously in response to that. Absolutely on the money as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. Good seeing you again. May you be well. Best wishes to you and your family. Sir Keir Starmer appearing here on Cool Keir on LBC, where the time is 9:35. News is next.
We're just hearing the COVID-19 booster vaccination programme is set to be extended to include people in their 40s. The government's advisors on vaccination have made the recommendation. They're also advising that 16 and 17-year-olds receive